There are three different types of social orders that human societies have, that there are three different categories of the way in which human societies have been organized. The first, which I'm not going to speak much about, is the hunter-gatherer or foraging order, which reaches back long before the historical period of humans. The second order we call the limited access order or the natural state. And this is a situation in which the political system manipulates the economic system. And the idea it's in part a solution to violence. I'm going to say more about violence in a second. But the idea is that creation of rents are central to sustaining order. And then the third form of social organization, the third social order, is an open access order in which political, economic, and other forms of competition help sustain order. So let me begin discussing the details of the framework by saying more about the logic of the natural state. All societies have to solve the problem of violence, but they do so in different ways. And the way they do so turns out to be very important for their performance over time. And so the natural state, or limited access order, solves the problem of violence by creating rents. So the key here is that the political system uses rents and limited access, limits on access to forming organizations, rights to do certain kinds of business as an effort to sustain order. Now, in contrast to limited access orders, there's an open access order. This is a very different form of social organization. In this, people are citizens. All citizens have the ability to form contractual organizations, so there's open access rather than limited or no access to organizations. And open access creates and sustains both political and economic competition, but also a very rich civil society. So there's a large variety of organizations of very different kinds. Now, one of the keys of this framework is that it provides a new way of thinking about the problem of economic and political development. And in fact, it redefines the problem of economic development as the transition from limited access to an open access order. And the key is that some natural states sometimes move into a position where moves toward open access can be sustained. And we call these conditions the doorstep conditions, and we have three of them. The first doorstep condition is rule of law for elites. So the idea is that elites move from a system of privilege where different groups with different kinds of power have different sets of privileges to a system where elites have all the same rights. So the second doorstep condition is the creation of a perpetual state. And this is the idea that the rules of the state, that is the constitutional rules, don't depend upon who is in power. So in a sense, there's an impersonality here. But this is the idea that perpetuity is necessary for the Constitution to bind successor rulers, so that the rules are the same even though there's a change of power. So, and the third doorstep condition is political control of the military. So this is the idea of consolidated control of the military that creates what Max Weber talked about every modern state having, that is the monopoly control on violence. So this is a situation where violence goes from, or access to violence goes from being distributed through, across society members to something that is controlled through rules, impersonal rules, by the national government. So let me summarize. Why do reform fail? Well, the first thing to mention is that natural states are not sick. As I said, that they are, there's a tendency to think about them in the donor communities as being sick, and that policy medicine is what required, is what the remedy is. And we think this is a problematic view, in part because these societies are successful at certain things. In particular, they're successful at limiting, not controlling completely, but limiting the amount of violence. And so the problem is that in these societies, attempts to insert or transplant market reform, democracy, and the rule of law then are very difficult. They fail to account for the logic of the natural state, and in particular the ideas of violence, perpetuity, and lack of personality, lack of impersonality, so that the same institutions, such as courts or elections, are going to work very differently under open access versus limited access. And these reforms cannot succeed, or not likely to succeed, in natural states that have limits on perpetuity and impersonality. So finally, what is to be done? Well, the first thing I want to say on this is that there are no magic bullets. I don't think there are any easy answers. Our perspective does, however, suggest that there may be a change in priorities may be useful here, and that is the idea is to focus on the consolidated political control of violence, creation of perpetuity, and the creation of impersonality. That is the idea of what I talked about before as the doorstep conditions, rather than a great leap toward direct development through implantation of full democracy, markets, and the like.